Midsommar is a wild, bloody, psychedelic, and disturbing display of horror. It's a swelling anxiety that ebbs and flows through the screen and into your brain with every brightly colored frame. And did I mention that it's also a great breakup movie?
What if I regret it later and I can't get her back?
Ari Aster has carved quite a name for himself into the horror canon with 3 original features that all explore deep and intimate themes under the guise of what the kids are calling elevated horror. Which, honestly, might make sense for Aster. In his debut feature, Hereditary, Aster explored guilt and grief through a deeply flawed family who belongs to an ancient cult. In Beau is Afraid, he calls back to his family dynamic themes and tells a story of a man realizing his mother's flaws while trying to desperately make her proud. And in Midsommar, Aster explores the falling out of a toxic relationship through the ritualistic practices of a Swedish cult. So today, we're gonna talk about it.
I've been thinking about something that I wanted to ask you, or tell you, actually.
2019's Midsommar follows Danny, played by Florence Pugh, a college girl who is left devastated by the news that her suicidal younger sister has just killed herself and their 2 parents in a very sinister mass carbon monoxide poisoning. This, obviously, shakes Danny to the core and drives an increasingly bigger wedge in her relationship with her boyfriend Christian, played by Jack Reynor. Christian is a selfish but seemingly just preoccupied boyfriend and is constantly looking for ways to minimize his time with Danny.
Where are you going?
I was just gonna go to that party for 45 minutes, but you just keep sleeping.
Oh.
But when Danny gets herself invited on a guy's trip to Sweden for the once-in-a-lifetime event of the Midsommar Festival, their relationship and physical well-being will be tested in more twisted and graphic ways than you could possibly be prepared for. If you know this movie, then you know what I mean when I say that we're about to get all the way into the guts of it.
Nu håller du här. Ska vi börja med att ta ut levern?
And my goal is to break down why this movie serves as a fantastic horror film and an almost comforting and, dare I say, cozy breakup movie. I'm realizing now that that is a very tall order, but I'm up for it. So, today we're going to break down the themes and occurrences of Midsommar and figure out why it's one of the greatest elevated horror movies in recent history. Let's get into it. The concept and title of Midsommar were originally brought to Aster as a traditional slasher film that would be set in the compound of a Swedish cult. Aster, being hot off the success of Hereditary, didn't see a way into the script that would make it interesting for him to take on. That was, of course, until Aster would go through a difficult breakup of his own, which left his heart set on expressing those otherwise inaccessible feelings and spinning them into something with style, shock value, and hours of entertainment.
I think it's gonna be fun.
Around this time, Ari was already hard at work on penning a story about 2 American lovers whose already rocky relationship would reach peak turmoil while visiting a Swedish compound during Midsommar. This would allow for the story to have its slasher elements, which, believe me, it does, while also providing an engaging look into a very unsteady relationship between 2 people who clearly want 2 different things. In fact, Aster has even gone on record stating that Midsommar is, quote, a breakup movie dressed in the clothes of a folk horror film.
You don't want her back.
I'm right.
Which plays more on the movie's rewatch when the shocking imagery is less surprising and attention-pulling. Although you can never really see something like this and not have your attention pulled. You know what I'm saying?
I just really need to not be here right now.
Yeah.
Filming began in Budapest in July 2018 and went on until October that same year. With initial filming being done in the sweltering heat of the summer, wasps and bees were a common nuisance on the set and would frequently cause already complicated tasks, like directing hundreds of extras, actors, and crew, to be even more difficult with insects crashing the shoot, and all while going through an actual difficult breakup in real life. Yikes.
I know what you're going through, Danny.
What am I going through?
Most reports of working on the film were ultimately positive, while by all accounts challenging and not without its less glamorous moments. Now, these are all things to be expected if you're looking to authentically make us feel uncomfortable. The film wrapped shooting near the end of 2018 and was swiftly edited and released in time for summer blockbuster season in July of 2019. Now, this movie doesn't hold anything back when it comes to the horror piece of it. The very opening scene is exactly the kind of shit that makes you perk up in your theater seat and try to choke down the lump that it puts in your throat. We see the murder and suicide of Danny's family and Danny's gut-wrenching reaction, which still sends chills down my spine. It's very much the same kind of energy as Toni Collette in Hereditary. It's rough to watch, but by God does it make for a good hook to the movie. Once in Sweden, the American crew and their friend/guide Pelle begin experiencing the horrors that await them right away, but slowly. First, Danny has a bad trip after taking mushrooms on the first day, and this brings her straight into panic mode, a feeling that she will not be able to shake for the rest of the film. Of course, probably the most horrifying scene in this film comes from one of the festival rituals that celebrates the passing of your physical life into your spiritual life. I mean, there are so many ways to fuck up my day, but this scene here, oof, it's a special kind of deranged. Not to mention the subtle anxiety you feel from the constantly moving cult members in the background of the film that very carefully and subtly add context clues and information to the story.
You saw that too, right?
There's a show going on in the background of almost every single scene that you're kind of not supposed to notice, but your brain is registering. The constant movement happening just out of focus creates a sense of restlessness and action that contradicts the slow burn pace of the movie. It's what gives you that tingling sensation in your spine every time you watch it.
Someone's so sore about their ancestral tree. Dude, is he gonna kill me?
To balance out the horror, we have characters like Mark, played brilliantly by Will Poulter, who provides comic relief and a sense of comfort in the sense that he feels like a classic side character in a slasher film. He's the one who's just there to party and hook up with weird cultist chicks. And then there's Josh, played by William Jackson Harper, who really feels like he should have been more important in this movie. He just works, and it's hard to explain.
Oh, so now you want to collaborate?
Okay, thank you.
Now, there are moments of horror throughout the movie that make it very easy to classify as just that, a horror, which it definitely fucking is. I mean, I literally saw a dude get sewn into a bear carcass and burned alive. So
we're just gonna ignore the bear then?
It's a bear.
He wanted to make a breakup movie. He wanted to make a movie that people would like go and watch in the cinema when they were going through a breakup, which is really insanely raw in this case.
I don't know why I'm here.
Ari spoke about this movie in the context of breakup films, and while this is a very kind of unorthodox take on that, I think it is a really, really interesting look at the core, how we treat our fellow human beings, and particularly those that we're in a relationship with, that being a friendship, a professional relationship, or a romantic one.
The way that it ends is probably the worst breakup ever.
You guys should join.
Oh no, I'm too scared.
Just like Sydney and Billy, this is a breakup that will be remembered by horror fans for a very long time. Christian and Danny are clearly drifting apart from each other from the very beginning of the movie. Just before Danny gets the news about her family, she calls Christian for support, and he blows her off to hang out with the boys. This is actually kind of understandable, as Christian is clearly not serious about his feelings for Danny, despite saying,
I love you.
All right.
Bye.
But even after she gets the news and her entire life is torn apart, he seems eager to skip the grieving process and just brush her feelings aside, not to mention his growing disinterest in Danny once they get to the festival.
The hell does that mean?
At first, Danny doesn't even seem to notice that Christian isn't that into her, and if she does notice, she clearly doesn't seem to mind at first.
Well then I'm sorry. I just got confused. I'm sorry.
Now, Danny, as our central character, comes into her own by the end, and just in the nick of time. Her arc is not that different from, say, Jason Segel in Forgetting Sarah Marshall, with our protagonists accepting that they never really liked what they had to begin with, and letting it go on their own terms. The only difference being that her version of closure is to watch Christian die brutally, yet poetically, as she takes her place as the May Queen at the Midsommar Festival. A true romantic coming-of-age ending for a very true horror final girl. This movie is challenging to narrow down because it's one that isn't quite as rewatchable as something like Halloween or Scream, but it's also something that seems to stick with you, and that's what I'm looking for. So to me, it's simple. This movie's X factor is that despite contradicting the concept of slashers by focusing on character development, not having the killers be a secret, taking place mostly during the day, the final girl barely being in any danger, and choosing to focus on the romantic disenchantment of the main characters over the horror cult activity going on right in front of us. And yet somehow it still feels like a classic horror movie with all the good, bad, and bloody elements that come with it. When I watch this movie, I feel the anxiety that I want from a thrilling story. I get the utter fear in my stomach from the disturbing scares of a graphic slasher film, and I even feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up from the juxtaposition of clean and ethereal images to paint a very dark picture. These are all things that I need from a good horror movie. But I also feel the sadness of a toxic breakup, the insecurity of how to move on from it, and the comfort in knowing that there will be a time to just let go. Folks, that is a wrap on Midsommar, and I gotta say, I strongly recommend this movie for anybody looking for something a little different for their next movie night. And of course, if you like this video, make sure you drop a like and subscribe, and of course share this video with your friends who might like this sort of content. Of course, leave us a comment below and let us know what other movies you'd like to see us deconstruct here on the channel. That's a wrap, everybody. Good night.
I just had to pee. I didn't know it was special.